Hey guys, thanks for stopping by and checking this out. This is actually my first, maybe second vlog. I am repping Spider-Man because New York Comic-Con was just in town and it was awesome. But I'm not talking about that right now. Right now I'm talking about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. That's right, I know. Seems like this video is way behind the times. This thing's been out for a couple years now, I think, and has gotten coverage beyond coverage beyond coverage. So I'm not gonna sit here and talk about all the specs on it. There are videos for that. I'm not gonna talk about all the downfalls of it. There are a lot of videos on that. What I am gonna talk about is a camera that has changed through the years and something that I don't think a lot of people realize it's become. And that is an extremely useful and very, very awesome camera. When it comes down to it, what do you really want? You want a beautiful image. You want something that looks good. And I can tell you the images that come out of this camera, when treated the way it's supposed to be treated, look absolutely beautiful. I love the look that comes out of this camera. And I'll share some of the videos that I've done with this camera in this post, but I wanted to talk a bit about a camera that's changed. This camera, when it came out, had a load of problems, most of which you've probably seen on videos in the past. Philip Bloom talked a lot about it, saying something to the effect of, it wouldn't even be his B camera, maybe his C camera. Now remember that that video came out like a long time ago, especially when you're talking about firmware that consistently is going to update your camera. That video is a little out of date because a lot has changed. No audio meters, people hated that. The fact that it got this black mark on overexposed, like, kind of sunspots almost. Of course, that's terrible, that's awful, that's unusable. Also going into just the fact that we couldn't even format a card within this camera. All of these things are terrible, and honestly, if I were Blackmagic, I probably would have held off a little before I put this camera out, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad camera now. See, firmware has now given us our histogram, it's given us our audio meters, it's taking care of all the bugs like that black dot, like the orbing, and you can finally format a card within your camera. Can you believe that? You can format a card within your camera. These are all things that we really should have seen when it came out. It took a year for them to kind of catch up, if not more. But it's actually a really cool camera now. I love this thing because when it comes down to it, when all those bugs have been taken care of, when all the bullshit is put aside, the image out of this thing is absolutely beautiful. Now, the thing that a lot of people are complaining about still is the low light. The low light is absolutely horrible on this camera. It is not good. It has a very low native ISO. It is it's just not meant for low light. But remember what this camera is named: the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. This is not the Blackmagic Pocket ENG camera. It is not the Blackmagic Pocket documentarian camera. This is a cinema camera. This is meant to be in a controlled environment. It's meant to be lit. It is meant to be making shorts and you know, films. It's not meant to be running around run and gun you know, in available light and such. This is meant to be lit. It says it in the name. It is a cinema camera. This is actually a really great cinema camera because when lit and when properly exposed, this image is beautiful. First place you can find this camera really performing beautifully is outside. Of course, the independent filmmaker's best friend, the sun. I shot a short in one of my favorite places of all time, Dead Horse Bay, here in Brooklyn, New York. And that was actually the first time I really took this out for a test drive. I'll show you some images of it right here. this camera became a pretty solid B cam, if not an A cam in many situations when I needed to do that kind of, when I needed to be smaller, or if I was just messing around. This became a beautiful camera to go to. It's fun, it's easy to maneuver, it's a small little thing, so to be able to throw this in your bag and go somewhere is great. Now, it can't go everywhere. I'm talking about if you're shooting outside, or if you're shooting in an extraordinarily well-lit place, you can just throw this in your bag and go. Well, this and about 500 batteries. But again, those batteries are just like 40 bucks. They're not expensive, and yes, it eats them alive, but again, this is kind of meant to be in a controlled area. It is what it is. It's got a bad battery life, but you can choose to buy the many batteries that it would take to shoot in a day, or you can hook it up via P-tap cable to like an Anton Bauer or a V-mount battery, which is what I do actually quite a bit, and that works beautifully. Now, if you have a larger camera and you have those batteries, that is definitely the way to go. But if you're an independent filmmaker and you don't have any camera that kind of requires a V-mount or a gold mount, then you're going to want to buy batteries. $40 a battery, man. And like, to do a short, like kind of in your own place, like running around, you could get like 4 or 5 batteries and you're good. And just make sure you're charging while you're shooting, if you can. But again, comes down to image. The image is beautiful. Now, this was even further validated when I was actually I was doing some consulting work for a production that was going to be shooting this documentary series. And they actually were bringing on the DP that does Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown. This guy, Zach, who I think is one of the most talented DPs in TV right now. He is, he does some amazing stuff. He's very ingenuitive, and he's always kind of pushing that show to be better and better and better visually, which I am a huge fan of. And I noticed on his list, when he was running down B cameras, was this little guy. One of the DPs that I hold in the highest regard wanted this little dude to run B cam to an F55 actually at the time. So I was amazed. I thought, man, I'm not the only one that thinks that this image is actually really beautiful. And you know what helps is this image. I think they boast 13 stops of dynamic range. This image is extremely flat and very gradable. Even when dealing in the ProRes codecs, it's just super usable. It's very flat, very easy to grade, and very easy to match with other extraordinarily flat color profiles, such as S-Log2 and S-Log3 in the Sony cams. This thing matches up really quite nicely. I guess the entire idea about this video, I'm gonna put this, well, no, it's fun to play around with it. The entire video is really to explain that this is a camera that has evolved into a camera that's very useful for a good number of people. If you're an independent filmmaker, somebody that is starting on their journey to make films, or somebody that you know, knows this is what you want to do, but money is not really like something you can come by that easily, this is a great camera to go with. Not only is it, first of all, a camera that shoots beautiful video, but it's a camera that shoots raw video. So it's going to teach you how to deal with the same type of files that you're going to be moving forward in your career, when dealing with RAW, it's great to come right out of the gate and understand RAW and get the chance to play with it. DaVinci Resolve has a freeware version that you can dig into this camera like and really play with it and really learn it. And that's going to actually help you a great deal going forward and using cameras like the Red, like the Alexa, like many others that where RAW is what you're going to be shooting in. This is a camera that is under $1,000. Now, are you going to need more batteries? Yes. If you don't have any lenses that fits the Micro Four Thirds sensor, are you going to need an adapter? Yes. But is it going to be cheaper than a C100 or a C300 or even an A7S these days? Yeah, it is. It's still going to be cheaper than all those things. Well, it's still just HD. Yeah, well, you know what most people are still watching on YouTube? HD. 4K is not even viewable on most people's home TVs. Like, yeah, YouTube has a 4K option. Guess how many people have 4K televisions to actually watch that? Not that many people. I think it's a cooler little camera because it actually kind of teaches you to deal with the things that you're going to be dealing with when you go forward and play around with bigger and more professional cinema cameras. So if making movies is what you want to do, this is a great tool for learning and for building while you create those films that are ultimately going to push you towards that as a career. You're going to learn how to deal with RAW. You're going to learn how to deal with exposure within RAW, which is very cool. And you're going to be able to create cinema quality images. Yes, I said cinema quality images because this has been used on a great deal of TV shows and movies. You're going to be able to do that all under $1,000. I know that there's a lot of videos and a lot of videographers that are that right out the gate just wanted to talk massive amounts of shit on this camera. But in the end, go to Vimeo, go to YouTube, and type in Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera and take a look at some of the shorts that have been done on this because they are impressive. They are beautiful and impressive, and all for a very, very small price point, which, I mean, ultimately, if you're a DIY filmmaker, if you're an independent, or if you're going to school, this is a brilliant camera to bring with you. Currently, I'm shooting a doc series on artists around New York, and this is the guy that I've been going to for the most part in that, because I'm doing a little more of a cinematic doc series, so I get to control the light a little more, I get to control my frame a little more, and this is the guy that I've kind of relied on. So when you're using a camera or looking for a camera as a young filmmaker or as a DIY filmmaker or as a film student, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera still is actually an excellent idea. And even if you're already a professional filmmaker and you need a very reliable camera in your back pocket, this is a great little guy to throw in your kit. It doesn't take up much space, and the image is beautiful. So check it out. Go look at some things that were shot by it. Go look at some of the shorts on Vimeo and YouTube. Go look at some of that stuff that plainly says, this is the camera we used, because that is what you should be paying attention to. Because at the end of the day, with all the tech specky things, it's the image that counts. Thanks for taking a moment and listening to me rant about one of my favorite little cameras. I'm going to try to do a couple more of these as time goes on. I'm a big fan of a lot of gear, so I figured I'll talk about it here because why not? You know, I know there's a lot of information out there about the Blackmagic. but it never hurts to have more people talking about it, more info to dig into. So that's how I learned, and that's how I continue to learn about gear, and I figured I'd kind of lend my voice to help where I can as well. So thanks again for taking a moment and talking to me, or listening to me, because you are currently a camera to me. Thanks for stopping by. I'll talk to you. At you being a camera.